Well, welcome everybody to the first evening chat of the semester with Dr. Christopher Nelson, who was a longtime faculty here. I think he was here about 4 or 5 years before I was here, um, which I've been here for going on 14 years. In fact, I think he had a little bit to do with me being here, if I remember correctly. He's currently now the Dean of uh, Liberal Arts and Humanities. And I think he's going to be very happy to be here because I don't think he's, in his current position, able to hang out with students as much as he used to be. So this will be a treat for all. Thank you guys for joining. It looks like we got quite a few students here already. For my students, I will be posting a link for an assignment link for a reaction paper. I'll have the details all there in the assignment link, but suffice to say, it'll just be a 1 to 2 page paper offering some details about what you learned in this talk, as well as maybe any pressing questions you might have from this talk. I do encourage all students throughout this talk, if you have any questions at all, you can turn on your mic and ask the question. If you'd rather use the chat box, by all means, ask your question there. If you have a comment that you would like to add, please do. We highly encourage student participation through this. For students that are not from my class, just consult with your instructor to see what it is you have to do if your instructor is offering you extra credit. So with that said, we'll get started. Thought I would start off with this nice little picture of a strapping young man, Sren Kierkegaard here. I'm going to take him down, but this was the man. And begin by just setting up a little bit of his biography, very brief, but I know he was born in 1813, so kind of a while back. He was a Lutheran and from Denmark, so he was Dutch. And he began writing in 1843, and I don't think he lived much longer than that, so correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Nelson. I think he lived till about 1855, so he didn't live too long.
Yeah, 1855. He died when he was 42, and he held the record in his family for longest living male in the family.
Wow, that's poor guy. What did he die of?
And actually thought he was cursed. And we might get into this later, but yeah, his father was a very, very fundamentalist Christian man who thought the family had been cursed and nobody would outlive however long the father lived. So it was a real surprise to this guy when that day came and he was like, he woke up and I'm still alive.
Wow. Okay, yeah, we probably will get into that. Just to kind of give you a framework of where we might be going with this, although this conversation could be as organic as it lays out here, but I'm an Americanist, and so as an Americanist, there's lots of things you could say about us, but practically speaking, we like to see how all things, whether they are really related or not, apply to U.S. history. So where I will probably bring us back is to see how Kierkegaard's philosophical work could be applied to better understanding Christianity as it's been expressed and practiced in the USA. But I'm thinking before we get into that, it's probably necessary to understand a little bit about the man and his philosophical work before we go there. But before we go there, I thought I would start off by asking you, what inspired you to get interested in Sren, and even more so in exploring in pursuing a PhD in his work, which from what I've learned about Kierkegaard, I first learned about him in graduate school, and we had to read a little bit of his work, and I remember that being some of the most difficult reading I've ever had to do. So thought I would just start off by seeing what got you interested in this guy.
So first they assign you the wrong works to read because yeah. There's difficult ones and there's easy ones, but yeah.
I'll get that guy on Rate Your Professor then.
No,
15 years,
for
16 years
me,
later.
I was like a lot of our students here. Some of you have probably had this moment already. A lot of you are probably still awaiting this moment when you have that, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to study. For me, I was an undergraduate at California State University, and I took a course on existentialism where we read the works of Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and Heidegger, and for the first time in my life, I realized, wait a minute, these professionals are asking questions that me and my friends are asking all the time. Is there a way that I could do this for a job?
Nice. What were some of those questions that you were asking, you and your friends hanging out asking?
Well, I remember the paper I wrote on Kierkegaard, which I was actually graded down on by my existentialism professor, which disappointed me, was I was into Nine Inch Nails at the point, and everything that Trent Reznor was complaining about resonated perfectly with everything that Kierkegaard had to say about the nature of despair and how it's a universal condition. And the worst form of despair, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, is being unaware that you're in despair.
Is to be unaware that you were in despair? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Ah. Mm. Okay, excellent. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. So I think the first thing we should probably establish, just to make sure we understand it, because I'm sure a lot of students are hearing about Kierkegaard for the first time, which is understandable. He's kind of, at this point, I think, for a lot of people, an obscure philosopher, for better or worse. But one thing I think it would be a good springboard is he's often considered, when you first get introduced to him, he's often considered the father of existentialism. What is existentialism, and why is he considered the father? Given that that term, I don't think was even invented until we got to the late 1940s, 1950s, if I'm correct on that.
Yeah, in France.
Okay.
No, and that's great, and that's perfect. His big beef was with the systematic philosophers. He was well trained, he was well educated, and something didn't sit right with him, with people, be they scientists or philosophers or what have you, who thought everything had place and we could put everything in its place. And he I won't say realized, but I'll say he proposed that existence doesn't, you can't figure that out. You can't systematize it. You can't rationalize it. It's chaotic. It's becoming, and that somehow resonated with me. That the really important questions in life will not be answered in any textbook ever.
Ah, that sounds sort of Taoist to me. Is that presumptuous of me to make that?
No,
Those that know.
No, at last year's meeting of the American Academy of Religion, one of the greatest sessions I attended was actually on Taoism and Kierkegaard, which are two things that people don't typically marry together. But yeah, the idea that, and well, you've seen the magnet, and I've got a shirt that says history can only be understood backwards, but life has to be lived forwards.
Okay.
And that sort of sums it up. There's the realm of understanding and comprehending and reasoning and logic, and that's all well and good. But when it comes to living, all of that really goes out the window.
Yeah. You it's sort of just being like, can you explain what's happening at this very second? It's sort of too late. You know,
Yeah, you
is what I
later
kind of.
you can explain, well, here's what happened. But
Mhm.
no, in the moment when you have to decide what you're going to do, no, there's no rules for that. There's no system for that. And Kierkegaard's point is there never will be and there can't be. And that's the human dilemma. We're presented with an impossible situation, which and put a pin in that word impossible because I'll come to back over and over again as long as we're talking together tonight.
Sure. Okay, this might be a question that really could springboard you getting deep into his philosophical work. Um, Going through and just doing a a quick study of Kierkegaard, um, I learned that he felt his calling was to make Christianity difficult. What in the heck did he mean by that?
No, now he didn't want to make it difficult. He wanted to do, and again, this is my reading. I'm just one Kierkegaard scholar. He wanted to clarify that Christianity is very, very simple to understand. It's a very simple message, but it is incredibly hard to do. And that's what he thought his calling was, is to take his fellow Danes who all thought they were Christians to task and to say, no, 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 you all think you're Christians, but have you actually read what they say Jesus said? It's yeah.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to that, but I think that will make it a we'll get that later. But I think that's going to kind of help us explain how Christianity is not always expressed in the United States, but where it's often expressed in the United States. Um, so what I was just thinking when you're expressing that, he's going after the Christians in Denmark. He's a Lutheran, and I think one thing we need to explain to students here who might not have a grasp of this: this is an established church, right?
Oh yeah.
It's
He
a state
lived
sanctioned.
in he lived in the golden age of Denmark. They were and in that sense, they are sort of analogous to where we are in America as a nation state.
Okay.
People were flourishing. There was a middle class, and uh, it was just assumed that if you were born in Denmark and Christianity is the state religion of Denmark, that as long as you were a good citizen, you were a Christian. That was just it. Be a
It
good
was an
be a good
identity.
person. Yeah, be a good person, you're a Christian. And
Okay.
and Kierkegaard took issue with that. And he wanted to say, no, 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 it's actually really, really hard to be a Christian. And in fact, in the few journal entries where he confronts himself with this question, am I a Christian? His answer is, I'm striving to become one.
So was it dangerous for him to make these critiques?
He, yes and no. His father had a successful business, so financially he was well off. He
Okay.
didn't have to worry about losing social status. But on the other hand, he was made, I mean, the object of ridicule in the press of the day. They 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 took issue with him. They caricatured him. He was maligned in the public press, and he actually eventually, I think, took some solace in that. Like, okay, so I have to suffer too. Oh yeah, that's part of being a Christian, suffering and self-sacrifice.
Uh, okay. Now there's a few quotes. Some big heavy quotes that I've come across that seem really interesting, but there's lots of little quick quotes that we could point to that I think can capture a lot of what the man was trying to get across to people. One of them that really kind of caught my eye is anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Um, that seems like a very strange quote on the surface of it, because definitely as Americans, we're taught that freedom is what it's all about, and the more freedom you have, the happier you're going to be, and it's worth defending. But this seems like a really dismal view of freedom. What's going on here?
Yeah, and we'd have to go back to Kant, and I'm sorry we don't have more time, but there's two senses of freedom, the sort of the positive and the negative. The negative sense of liberty is I don't have any constraints on me, and that's what we typically focus on. I'm free because nobody's chaining me down, and we all advocate for that, yay for that. But the positive sense of freedom is, since I don't have any chains on me, I'm absolutely responsible for every choice I make. And if I choose wrong, that is 100% on me. And that's where I think he's talking about the dizziness of freedom. Once you start to realize all of this is on me, and if I drown, it's my fault. Oh my God. Oh, there's no one to help me. I'm free. No one's going to tell me what to do. I have to make up my own rules. What if I make up the wrong rules?
Oh, okay. So as a philosopher, and this, I think that this quote kind of gets to what I think a lot of philosophers tend to do, is they try to explain basically what the human condition is, both its virtues and its follies. How do you think he would have explained the human condition?
A tendency towards mass delusion.
Okay, please further explain that.
No, which is why, and this is something that's controversial. He lived in the first half of the 19th century. Democratic revolutions were sprouting up everywhere around Europe, and he actually went on record saying, I don't think this is a good thing. I don't trust the mob to humanely rule themselves.
Okay, so from the little I know of philosophy, he would be labeled as a Platonist in that manner, somebody that would be dubious of democratic institutions.
No,
due to human folly.
Yes and no, but for a very different reason. And there's this great piece that he has in one of his journals, and Maryland Piety, if anybody's taken notes, is awesome on this. When Denmark was actually in the middle of the 19th century, everybody in Europe is arguing about, democratic reform. And Kierkegaard's take on this was, I would trust a monarch, because at the time Denmark was a monarchy. I would trust a monarch more than a democratic parliament, because an individual is more likely to be in touch with their conscience than a mob is.
And by a mob, he just meant like a mass of people with different interests and ideas of how to organize society, kind of creating chaos. Is that what he was getting at?
A mass of people fueled by, in his age, what was the advent of the public press. But in our age, the analog would be social media.
Twitter.
Yeah. Twitter, Facebook.
And historically speaking, this would really make sense. I mean, because he's born just shortly after the French Revolution, so I'm sure he's hearing from his father and anyone older about how insane that was. I mean, it was basically, at the beginning, something that sounded like a good idea and turned into insanity tenfold. And so, I could see, especially somebody of wealth, being very dubious of democratic revolutions happening all over Europe at the time.
Yeah, and I think there's two things there. I mean, there's the old platitude about no matter what the revolution is, you're just going to reinstall a new dictatorial form of government. But I think Kierkegaard was inherently suspicious of the idea of democracy, because, and maybe this will get us to the main point, what really matters is not collectively decided, but what really matters for Kierkegaard is one's inward relationship with the divine power that is the ground of all being.
And what is he believing that? Do you believe that would be interfered with, living within a society that's trying to make collective decisions about important policy and how to make a better flourishing society through democratic means?
Yeah, this was, to take his later writings at their word, this was his primary concern, is that religions were being weaponized by political parties for political aims and ends. That nobody really cared about being a Christian, which in Denmark you were supposed to be, but Christianity was being weaponized to promote partisan political ends.
Okay, this is a good segue to kind of my hidden agenda of why I want to explore Kierkegaard with you.
Now I find out why you did this to me. Okay, go.
Let's bring this into the center of the universe, American U.S. history. So full disclosure to anybody listening, I'm not a Christian, but I have read much of the Bible, and I remember reading it in my early 20s, really earnestly, and being really interested in what the teachings of Jesus were, especially given the fact that even though this text is something that has been translated from various languages and cultures, it still seemed to have a very controversial message when you try to apply it to human institutions like government and social norms. Jesus, from all accounts, from my reading, and I'm not an expert on Christianity, but from my brief reading on it, he seemed to be quite radical. He was dubious of people who had wealth. He seemed interested in detribalizing people at a time when tribalism was the central core of most institutions in human societies. And his life, now that I'm talking with you, did seem to be somebody living right now and making decisions right now as they happen. He seemed to be reacting to things on the ground. So with that said, looking at how religion has been expressed and practiced in the USA, not exclusively, but for purposes, especially for my students listening, especially in my 1301 class, we are now looking at the development of how slavery shifted from this ancient practice. It's something that's part and parcel of civilization. There's always been a class of people that had to do the work that nobody else wanted to do, right? And it usually slaves were people, prisoners of war, people in debt, criminals, right? So anybody could be a slave. But what we begin to see happen in colonial America is a shift from this ancient practice of slavery to race-based slavery, right? That is, using people of African descent, designating them as this class where you could justify exploiting them in the most horrific, brutal ways, and still see yourself as a committed, true Christian. And so in our class right now, we are reading primary documents where this was done by senators, by theologians, explaining to people and defending this institution as it's beginning to be attacked because of the American Revolution and the lofty democratic rhetoric used to justify breaking away from Great Britain. people began to at least scratch their head, like, this doesn't seem to jive with the arguments that we put forward to claim our independence from Great Britain. Clearly not a majority of Americans at the time, but it was enough to where it needed to be justified in. There were lots of ways it was justified. It was justified politically, economically, but it seemed the most convincing way was to justify it through religious means. And you would see people use like the story of Canaan, right? The mark of Canaan, and these were the descendants of the slaves, or the descendants of Canaan, and therefore this is something that God ordained, and we are justified and still exploiting them. Also, you would hear rhetoric where since Christianity wasn't prevalent in Africa, bringing them here introduced them to Christianity. And since one of the core beliefs of Christianity is that if you profess that Jesus is the Savior, the Son of God, that's really your kind of ticket into heaven. And so, good on us, for the slave owners, that is, for bringing these people here. And, yes, we might be being brutal, and yes, there's things that are a little bit morally problematic about it, but in the end, it's going to be good, right? And so that's one expression of how Christianity, the teachings of Jesus and the expressions of Christianity don't seem to jive. We see it too, I think, in the prosperity gospel of today, which kind of goes back to, I don't want to go too much into detail, but the New Deal, where you had kind of titans of industry who were very worried that Frederick Delano Roosevelt was going too far with his policies on trying to help the American people out. And so they tried to basically, and it was very successful, painting a picture of how FDR was not only going against capitalism, but he was going against Christianity, because these two things are intertwined. And again, my brief reading of Jesus' teaching seems to be very odd, because there seems to be quite a few passages in the gospel where Jesus is very critical of those of wealth and very dubious of those of wealth of ever getting into heaven. But basically, they would make the argument that if you're a good capitalist and you work hard and do good works within a capitalist system, that's akin to being a good Christian and getting into heaven. And that philosophy for not all Christians, but that seems to be a very prevalent expression of Christianity in some circles today. So I don't want to debate like what's the correct expression of Christianity within American history or contemporary American society today, but I'm just wondering how, if we could be so bold, how would Kierkegaard kind of approach expressions of Christianity and justifying whatever kind of political thought or economic institution that one was seeking to justify?
No, that's a fantastic question. There's just too many ways to approach it. And since you and I have been bantering back and forth for 29 minutes, I'd like to open it up to, I want to hear the students talk.
Sure.
What do we think when we hear somebody say, America is a Christian nation?
Yeah, students, if you want to turn on your mic, please do, or if you would like just to put that in the chat box, you can do that as well. But
because, and just for context, when Kierkegaard was alive, Christianity was the state-sanctioned religion of the state of Denmark. So if you were born in Denmark, you were de facto a Christian. That's all it took. Be a good citizen of Denmark, and that means you're a Christian. I think we have a much more complex situation in our country today, but we do hear people say this, and even give them the benefit of the doubt. What does it mean to say America is a Christian nation? And I'll just, it's a trick question, but
Well, thank you for being upfront about that.
yeah.
Yeah. So far in the chat box, we got white people. That's what I guess what this person's referring to is to be white is to be Christian, is to be an American. If I could be presumptuous on expanding on that, it sort of sounds like English is the official language of the U.S. Like, come on, we know that's far from true. How much money do the politicians have? We've got some cynical folks on board. This is good. The Bible
Good.
Belt, excellent. Conservatism in general. I don't think American is a Christian nation.
Okay, Margarita. Margarita Garcia, number 2. Why? Don't mean to put you on the spot. If you don't want to answer, I can answer.
Just a saying that we have morals that we. Oh, that's a good point, Juan. A saying to say we have morals that we follow. That's a valid point. Yeah, Catherine, that a lot of our things are based through Christianity and woven into our daily lives.
Okay, but and this was Kierkegaard's basic tactic was Christianity is simple to understand but difficult to execute. And it's simple to understand if I'm able to read this. I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you visited me. So if that's Jesus talking, and America is a Christian nation, those would be our national priorities.
I get the point that you're making. I want to circle back to some of the things that the students are posting, because I think it does fall into some of the critiques that Kierkegaard would have had. Because I'm seeing the United States, one nation under God is in our pledge. The national anthem refers to God. So these are cultural expressions paying deference to expressions of the religion. But it seems from just talking to you briefly on this, Dr. Nelson, that those are things that worried or made Christianity unnecessarily complex.
Well, and if I could add one more to the mix, and maybe if you've trained your students right, they'll pick up on this right away. Maybe train's not the right word, but according to the teachings of Jesus, when somebody strikes you on the right cheek, you are to do what? Okay, so
Nuke them.
Can you be given that teaching? Does the idea of a Christian nation even make sense with a military defense budget at all? And I think this was part of Kierkegaard's struggle. He was dealing with these political revolutions, and the very idea of a Christian state struck him as absurd, because it makes sense to be a Christian person. You can have an individual relationship with God through Jesus Christ, but to be a Christian nation, if the nation wants to embody these principles, if some other country fires missiles at us, we should just turn the other cheek if we're a Christian nation. So, yeah, food for thought.
Whew, that makes it difficult. So I think in a philosophy club session you were there, and one of the, I could be wrong on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you opened up the session by saying that Kierkegaard argued, and you were summarizing him, but basically you were opening up by saying Christianity is the craziest religion ever. One of them.
Okay, now we're getting all right. Yes, yes, I did say that.
So I think you were summarizing him, but that does probably capture what he was getting at, and in relation to what you just said. So, and basically, I think what we're getting at here is you can grab to the identity of being a Christian, and by proxy of that, a collection of people can claim that we are a Christian nation. But it seemed like Kierkegaard was interested in, okay, no, but what does it mean to you to be Christian in your day-to-day life? And so, and trying to look at the teachings of Jesus, and all while coinciding in a modern day society, you're going to be in conflict and probably have a great difficulty with your sanity trying to put those things together in your daily life. Is that
Yes.
what we're doing?
Yes, and I think that, and that was, and this would make more sense to the philosophers in the room than anybody else. But yeah, the chief combatant that Kierkegaard had was philosophers who are trying to think their way through Christianity. This is the way it makes sense. This is the way society should be run. This is what Jesus really meant. And what Kierkegaard was saying is, no, you can't think this. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because I mean, in the lived experience, if somebody smacks you in the face, it makes sense to retaliate and defend yourself. Is that sort of what we're getting at?
No, and not just that. The idea that Jesus could be a man and God at the same time.
Oh,
You can't think that thought. And Kierkegaard says, you can't think that thought. The fact that Abraham was effectively a child murderer until the hand of God held him back.
attempted,
You can't think that. No, but willingly, you can't think that thought. These things are impossible. And this is what Kierkegaard is emphasizing over and over again about Christianity is it's impossible. You can't reason your way through this. And you certainly can't talk about it with, a delegate of people in your party. It has to be taken on faith. But I mean, the one thing I wanted to get across here is when Kierkegaard talks about Christianity, he's talking about recognizing the impossibility of being forgiven for what we are. Because let's face it, we're all, I'm sorry, Sean, we're all fucked up. Yeah.
I think history, there's an argument in history to make that claim.
Yeah. And study American history. We're the exceptional nation and we're the worst ever. There's no forgiving us. But what Kierkegaard is saying is, once you're so self-aware of how impossible it is for you to be forgiven, and then to realize God's love forgives you, you have to recognize that's impossible. As finite human beings, we can't contain the love of God. So if we accept the love of God, this ought to flow out of us in terms of love of neighbor. And that's where the question of Christianity and politics gets really, really interesting. Like should we be doing more to feed the poor and clothe the naked and free the incarcerated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? It's an open question. It's a live debate.
Yeah, and it's difficult to jive given that we live in a capitalistic economy. I mean, and that's, I think, where it gets sort of, oh, let me hearkening back to this quote, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. If it it makes it difficult because part of the tenets of capitalism is to procure as much material for yourself, which inevitably is meaning it's taking away from somebody who actually needs that, not just for entertainment value, but to live day to day. And I think
No,
it's something.
it gets worse than that, because if you really press the issue, the and if you do this logically, the people in material poverty are actually closer to God than those who are, doing well, and the bourgeois. And this is something that Kierkegaard was trying to negotiate as an advocate of Christianity and as the heir to, matrimony that set him up for life. He was deeply conflicted as a person, which I would say all Christians should be.
Yeah. And it certainly does seem to jive with the story of Jesus. He wasn't hanging out with the governing body of the church of his time. He was hanging out with, basically the poor and the criminals, prostitutes, because I think he saw something in them that would kind of resonate in what was being getting across. Another thing I was thinking of the Gospels too is hearkening back to it's hard to even know what to do in the moment of as he is being crucified. A very famous quote of his is, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do."
And then the Father probably forgave them, whether they knew it or not.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that really gets to this idea of it's how it's said. Wendy's, it's how it's said. I'm just wondering if you want to elaborate on that, Wendy, that would be interesting. I'm wondering what you mean by that.
I would love to hear from some more of these students, because I came to this totally unprepared, and
no, the chat box is lit up.
I know, but I
Yeah.
can't keep up.
Yeah. So yeah, if there's anybody who wants to turn on their mic and really join in on the conversation, to ask any question or to seek some clarification or to make a comment, and how you're interpreting this dialogue between us two guys trying to figure this thing out.
Well, what I was saying, I know earlier I was questioned about why I believe that our nation is not a Christian nation. And what I was trying to explain was, we all use Christianity to our convenience. We don't really, as much as we can claim, oh, I'm a Christian. Are you really though? You know what I mean? Because Christians have a certain belief to things, and they don't always follow through with what they believe in. For example, in the Bible, and I don't recall what part of the Bible, because I had a history course a few summers ago, and my professor provided us some readings of the Bible where it says, we basically, you are allowed to have a slave, you are allowed to torture your slave as long as you don't kill your slave. So Christians, not all Christians, some Christians tend to want to preach so much or follow so much of the Bible, yet the law of the land states a different scenario. Here on the law here states we can't have slaves. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm saying, like, we're not a Christian nation because we all use Christianity to our convenience. We choose what we want to believe, and we choose what we want to follow. So we can't really say that we're a Christian nation when we don't really follow it, if I make any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense, and it raises an important issue. And the argument that you're alluding to, we've been having since Jesus died. Christian theologians have been batting this back and forth. How much weight do we give to the Old Testament and the laws and the prophets? How much weight do we give to what we think Jesus said? How much weight do we give to what Paul, who wrote the bulk of the New Testament, said. And yeah, just again, from Kierkegaard's perspective, he wants to try and simple it down and say, here's what Jesus said, and what would Jesus do? Which ironically, it's most of our students, Sean, are probably too young to remember this, right? The WWJD bumper sticker movement
Oh,
of
yeah.
the early aughts. Yeah.
What would
It's,
Jesus do?
what would Jesus do? I think it's a great question. But it was always funny to me. It was probably funny to you in California. You would see these "What would Jesus do" bumper stickers on a Hummer. Like, yeah, that's what Jesus would do. He would drive a gas guzzling vehicle that cost $80,000. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That checks out.
Yeah. One of the questions that came up that I think a student was seeking clarification. L asked, you said people who are closer to poverty are closer to God. Why is that? Is there anything you could further clarify on that?
Yes, they have less of the bullshit to let go of to get closer to God.
That's
and it's
yeah.
and it's a hard saying, and it's and it's a hard truth. But people who are poor, people who are suffering, they are actually closer to God because they have so much less of like the things that Sean and I have to get rid of before we get closer to God. And I hate to say that as a bourgeois, middle-aged, privileged male, but I think it might be true.
Yeah, no, practically speaking, it kind of just plays out in between doing the right thing and the wrong thing, just in day-to-day thinking. Oftentimes, sometimes you have to compromise on whatever that is because you start thinking in the back of your mind, I have a mortgage to pay, a car payment, and I still need to save money so my kid can maybe go to college one day. And those inevitably entail choices that make it difficult to follow the teachings of Jesus in many ways.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a couple of things in the chat that I think I can sum up with another passage that was allegedly said by Jesus. Sell all your worldly belongings, give it all to the poor, then you can follow me.
Mm.
And that's something that the Christians, by and large in this country, sort of gloss over. That's one of the passages they don't like to quote. If you're rich and you want to be a Christian, you should sell everything you have, donate it to the poor, because that's what Jesus said, and then you could begin to follow him. But we pick and choose.
Yeah. Question that I saw that real quick, probably a question you can answer, but what readings would you recommend for someone beginning to wanting to better understand Kierkegaard?
Works of Love.
Works of Love?
Works of Love. Yeah, he has a book called Works of Love, and that's most students are introduced to Kierkegaard in all the wrong ways in college. They do Fear and Trembling, Sickness unto Death, the really sick, evocative, provocative stuff. Works of Love, which is where he really says, okay, here's the few things that Jesus said. Let's meditate on what these mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put it in the chat. This is the
actual.
And any translation is good. They're all equally bad. It's Danish to English, but yeah. Because what's the most important commandment?
Thou shalt not
Love the
kill.
neighbor? No, love the neighbor, which
Oh yes,
also means you should not kill them. That's you get half credit.
Yeah. Are there any modern philosophers who echo Kierkegaard's message? I get a very David Foster Wallace feel from what you have said so far. Oh, very interesting question, Tom. What do you think about that, Dr. Nelson?
On a very personal note, David Foster Wallace is the author who made me break my rule that I would never read works by authors who committed suicide. So yeah, I think DFW has a lot to say, and his nonfiction I like better than his fiction. Although I'm trying to get into his fiction. It's very, very difficult to read. Probably more difficult than Kierkegaard, but yeah, I think if anybody wants a infinite jest, still trying. But if anybody wants just a taste, just Google "This is Water."
Is that a talk of his?
It was the only commencement speech he ever gave.
Okay. Yeah. Tom, just curious, what do you see any from what we've been discussing here? Do you see any parallels to Kierkegaard and David Foster Wallace?
Well, and before Tom can log on, I think the connection there is Kierkegaard and DFW are both concerned with, here we are in this finite human condition, what makes this meaningful? Let's not give ourselves, which I think this is Kierkegaard's basic complaint, is so many, what he called Christendom, they gave themselves an out. Like, it doesn't matter what I do in this life. And Luther has a lot, we can blame him for a lot of this. What I do in this life doesn't matter. As long as I just say the right words and accept JC, I'm okay. But SK and DFW both wanted to emphasize, no, what we do in this finite time absolutely matters. This is our only shot. Unless you're a Hindu, you might get more shots.
Is that why people characterize him as the father of existentialism? It's your values are based on what you do rather than what you think or say. Is that a fair characterization of?
Well, I think they characterize him as the father of existentialism because he was the first real dissenting voice to a 1,000-year tradition of philosophy being systematic. And he was the first one, as far as I can tell, he was the first one to call bullshit on this system. That if you're going to talk about the meaning of life, you can't, that a spreadsheet is not going to work. We're going to have to come at this a very, very different way. And that's why I loved Kierkegaard. He came at this in so many creative ways. Half of his works were written under pseudonyms where he occupied alter personae and investigated issues from different perspectives. So he wasn't just entertaining different questions, he was entertaining the same questions from different perspectives. Because it can't be systematized. It's subjective.
That is something. Yeah, could the subjectivity of truth? Can you expand on that? That's seems like to be a principle of his philosophy. What does that mean?
Not subjectivity is truth. Truth is subjectivity.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we can use the word true in a couple different senses. We can say the statement that 2 + 2 = 4 is true. That's one way of using the word true. But I can also call you, Sean, my true friend. Those are very different meanings or senses of the word true. And Kierkegaard was much interested in the latter as opposed to the former.
So truth and how the individual experiences it.
Yes.
Within that.
Yeah. Truth is not a mathematical equation. Truth is what actually matters.
And understanding that concept, does that explain why it's difficult in practice to be a Christian?
Absolutely. Because it's difficult. It's fucking hard.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that strikes me is that I think people, historical figures who made at least an attempt to practice what is referred to, I think, in Christian doctrine as agape love, usually are people that are heavily persecuted by their contemporaries. They are often either imprisoned or worse, they are killed for that. Does Kierkegaard have any explanation of why that is? I mean, even Jesus, the historical Jesus, was killed for what he preached and practiced, ostensibly.
Oh, I would have to confer with my brothers and sisters in history and political science and social psychology to really know, but I suspect my gut instinct says the powers that be recognize very, very quickly that if everybody took Jesus seriously, they would be fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it's not a difficult thing to if everybody's giving away their worldly goods and helping the poor and becoming poor
Yeah,
themselves.
what's the angle on that? Where's my margins? How do I no, it's game over.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Another talk that I'm going to be having on Martin Luther King, exploring a very obscure speech of his, Beyond Vietnam. King explores the concept in very political ways of agape love, and basically makes the argument that throw out your allegiances to being an American. You really can't do that. And the fact that we are bombing the hell out of this poor country, Vietnam, you as a Christian have a duty to rebel against that. And then it's called Beyond Vietnam because he says, okay, this is Vietnam, but this is just one variable in a long pattern that if we don't get it right, it is going to continue for generations to come. And so we've got to figure out how he put it is we need to have a true revolution of values. And people, historians that really dive deep into King basically say that speech is what got him killed. He dug too deep to the core of the matter.
But he wasn't the first one to ask for that. I mean,
No.
the antithesis or the antichrist to Kierkegaard is Friedrich Nietzsche, who was also my probably second favorite philosopher, and he was saying much the same things.
How so? Just if you could put it briefly.
Briefly.
Succinctly, I'll put succinctly, which could entail some explanation.
I don't know if I can do it even succinctly. I would advise, yeah, read some Kierkegaard, read some Nietzsche. I see Tom wants us to listen to and or read Bill Hicks. I totally endorse that. Um, but yeah, the question, at least for me, isn't so much what we can know or not know. The question is, what is our spiritual orientation towards each other and the world that we live in? And I think that's something that tragically academic philosophy, if any of you have taken these courses, has forsaken. That it's not about, the truth values of propositions and figuring out how we can know for sure that something is true. No, philosophy with guys like Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and, by extension Bill Hicks, is about what is our orientation towards others. What is our attitude to them? Do we want to love them unconditionally? In which case, we're going to get hurt. And Jesus, I think he's the example of that. If you really want to be a good person, the world's going to nail you to the cross and make you suffer. So is it worth being a good person? I think that's the question Kierkegaard was raising for Christendom in Denmark, where everyone in Denmark claimed to be a Christian. He was basically saying, well, hold on, hit pause. Remember the first Christian and what the world did to him? Are you ready to do that for unconditional love? Agape. It's
Yeah, it's difficult to make that cost-benefit analysis at times. At the end of the day at work, you just want to go home and relax, and kind of carry on with what you're doing, and open up your heart. It's a big world out there.
But there's also the idea that how did Shakespeare put it in Hamlet?
Yeah.
That there are something about reality being far greater than anything that's dreamed in our philosophies. I think that's a part of faith. If you really want to be a Christian, and I'm not proselytizing here. I wouldn't even claim to be a Christian. Kierkegaard wouldn't even claim to be a Christian. He would just say, I was striving to be one. But maybe things are potentially more awesome than the people in power would have us believe.
Yeah. It strikes me real quick, and we could conclude this discussion unless some students wanted to chime in, because we've been at it for an hour. But I'm kind of thinking of like people who, especially in the arts, who've been very successful and kind of reached the height of success, usually in music. When you look at some of the things that they wrote, it's basically they achieved their dream. People were buying their records or going to their shows, and they got there, and there was nothing else for them to go to. And at the end of the day, they felt empty inside. And so self-destruction seemed to be a way of kind of quieting that noise to the point to where, a lot of, it seems common that some of these people just, often kill themselves either intentionally or through drug use.
Yeah, which I think harkens back to the earlier question about why the people who are the worst off in this world, and this is again hard for me to say, they're actually closest to God.
Yeah.
They have the least to give up.
You know, it just struck me that a lot of slave narratives, especially in the antebellum period, it's very common for those that were able to document their experience being enslaved, where they would express that they felt bad for their masters because the institution that gave them so much wealth and power made them monsters, and they could see it, that they were conflicted. They hated them as individuals, but they understood that this is a terrible thing that's happened to them, even though on the surface they have everything that anybody could ever want.
Yeah. And just to, I haven't been able to follow the whole chat, but Veronica Garza, number 2, it's a narrow road. Yeah, it's a narrow road, and few who find it. That was Kierkegaard fully believed that. And it's not because the road is narrow that few find it. It was because, and this is where Kierkegaard gets explodingly interesting, few find the narrow road because there are so many other factors in play that distract people from the narrow road.
That's a good way.
Political leaders, leaders in media, it's nobody. There's no money to be made on helping people find the narrow road. So fewer and fewer are finding it. Just one humble man's opinion.
Seems like any sane person would want to be a good Christian based solely on principle, but basically anyone who claims to be one is lying. I like Tom's attitude here. Did he congregate of some people sugar coating the gospel? You see that question there, Sergio? Of Sergio's there, Chris?
I did.
Some people sugarcoating the gospel.
I'm not sure what he means by sugarcoating, but I'd love for Sergio to come online.
Yeah, Sergio, if you want to turn on your mic and kind of clarify what you're getting at with that question, it seems like an interesting avenue to explore. It'll be due, Catherine, it'll be due tomorrow, basically at midnight. I'll post it right after I'm done talking here. Like in translating.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a worry, and happily we do have a thriving community of scholars in the American Academy of Religion who are trying to hold each other accountable for, is this bullshit, or was this really written, and can you show me the documentation? And this is where the historians and the archaeologists also help us out. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's one big problem that we haven't addressed yet is just limiting ourselves to Christianity, what did Jesus really say? Do any of us know? It's hard. Kierkegaard actually played the under on that card and said, look, historically we can't document any of this, but if I just take these 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I hold all of you accountable, you're all getting Fs.
Extra credit isn't going to help you.
Yeah.
Well,
has it been any good?
I'm both. What's curious is I feel both depressed and inspired.
Well, that's the human condition, my friend.
So I think, yeah, this was a great talk, and I think we can see how just the basic contradictions when we get down to it of how it could apply to how Christianity's been expressed in this country. And you could apply that to, I think, any religion in any nation state, or kingdom or empire. It's once you are intricately tied to some sort of system that is dedicated towards protecting itself, made up of individuals trying to accumulate wealth, it's going to be hard to follow the teachings of any mystic, let alone Jesus, because I think they were dealing with a completely different perspective than I think the average human is even used to even contemplating.
No, and I think that's a good point to end on, because I think what Kierkegaard would say, and I wouldn't presume to speak for Jesus, but if I could, I would say, is you should break with the norm. Your relationship with God, it's, in terms of Christianity, we can talk about other religions or even atheism on another time, but your relationship with God should be a very personal, very individual one, and party politics and mob mentality should be anathema to that. That's the enemy. Your individual, conscientious relationship with God should inform your decisions about whether or not you want to storm the Capitol. Just to use the most recent example.
Yeah.
But yeah, once people, and this was Kierkegaard's worry, is people, Christianity is supposed to be a religion of, I relate to God inwardly, and then God loves me so much that love just overflows, and I start loving my neighbors. But the way that it's been captured is it's been weaponized, and I don't know.
Yeah, systematized too. Just here's some things you can do to be a good Christian. Follow these rules, and you will be a good Christian. But yeah, it sounds like it's something that is a very intimate, ineffable experience that, yeah, those that know do not say, because they can't. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for all the students that joined. It looks like we have 32 people in here. That's a huge, record-breaking event, especially in an online event like this. So I think there's a lot to think about here. This is being recorded, and I'll post it to my classes, so if you want to review it, you can. And I will send it out to my colleagues as well, so you could review it as well if you're not in my class. And yeah, for my students, I'll be posting the assignment. It'll be due tomorrow night. And basically, just there'll be specifics, but it's just write what you learned here, offer any kind of perspective. If there were things especially if there was things you disagreed with in this talk, definitely.
Especially.
But
yes.
Yeah.
But could I interject?
Sure.
Sean, I'd like to do this again, but the next time I would like to hear from the students more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's sometimes difficult, I think, with technical problems, and it is kind of a weird thing to express your thoughts in an online environment. But yeah, definitely, it's worth hearing from students.
Because I don't need to they can read things that I've written. I don't need to throw this at them. I want to hear what they're actually thinking, because I don't know do your students know this, that we're both old now?
Yeah.
We're not in touch with them. we actually don't understand their frame of reference at all. It's
No.
we need, yeah. So they need to speak up.
Yeah.
And get us back in touch with what year is this?
2021.
Yeah,
My brother just told me 2021.
yeah, we're getting up there. Yeah, I'm gonna go rock out to some Nirvana tonight and spin some records.
All right. I
All
love
right,
you,
on that
brother.
note, we'll
No, and
call it a
thanks
night.
for all this.
Thank you all for joining.
Will this chat be saved in Blackboard so I can go back through it and maybe touch base with some of these, or is this going to die once we close it?
No, the chat is recorded in the video feed, so it'll be there.
All right.
So
All right. So those of you who ask questions, I'm going to be stalking you.
all right. Yeah. Well, on that note, real quick, I hate to put you on the spot, but if students really did have questions, could they get a hold of you? Would that be okay? He's thinking about it. Hold on.
Was that a rhetorical question? No,
I think we're good.
as Sean said, I taught philosophy here for over a decade. Now I'm an administrator. I don't get to teach anymore. I miss students. So, yes, you dummy. That's of course. Yeah, give them my contact information.
Typing in your home address right now, so they can come hang out with you.
No, Sean.
Oh, sorry, Bobby.
Yeah, but my wife says don't give them the Google Maps of my house.
Here we go. There's his email address. So you can email him, and then you can go from there. I think that's it, right? Am I correct there?
Looks right.
Okay. And yeah, you can get a hold of me too later if you have further questions. But yeah, we'll call it quits for now, and we can go home and contemplate on these deep thoughts that we had tonight. Thanks a lot, everybody.
All right. See you later.